The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
David Morgan, themorganreport.com. This is the weekly perspective for July 16th, 2021. Well, this week I thought I'd do something a little different. Rather than give the weekly perspective, I just came back from a mining trip with some others, Jeff Clark being one of them, Chen Lin, and it was a productive time. It usually is. And I thought I'd just show you a video that we did, Jeff Clark and I, in my living room a day or two before we left on this trip. And we just batted some ideas back and forth that I think some of you that follow this channel might be interested in watching. So without further ado, here it is. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to Spokane.
Yeah, thank you, David. I love being here. I love where you live. Love your home. I love the area. So it's great being in the home of the famous Silver Guru.
So I'm impressed. So you were going on a mining tour tomorrow, and you and I have been on mining trips together many times. In fact, I think the first time we met was after one of the earliest Endeavor.
Endeavor Silver. Yep.
And we're all sitting around. I forget who else was there. It was like 5 or 6 analysts.
Yeah.
We're all kind of having a tee-hee because it can be a bit stressful. I mean, you are thinking, working, walking, whatever, and then there's a relaxed time afterwards. So I do recall that was a time I first met you. I'd known of you, but hadn't really met
I think Endeavor, I've been on their mine tour twice. Yeah. And their first one, I think, was my very first one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So tomorrow, you and I are going to be going off to an undisclosed location that isn't too far from where we're sitting.
Right.
And you can guess what element we'll be interested in.
I think people will know.
But having said that, why do we even bother doing this?
Well, for one, I'm really glad that we're going back out because I personally have missed it. But beyond that, there's something to be said for actually being on site, as you know, seeing the rock, seeing the mine or whatever it might be, looking at the property, and looking management in the eye. I really kind of miss that. I don't think you can get that off of Skype. I don't think it's entirely appropriate to base a recommendation off a corporate presentation on a website. You know, I think it's important that we do get out. And I think analyst stores are starting to open back up again. You know, I think I'm going to be on 3 myself this year. Mm-hmm. You'll probably be on more than that. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important. It's good for us, and it's good for the industry, and it's good for the investors to be able to do that.
Yeah, I can only really add on slightly to what you said. I mean, it's much better to go and see, because we always hear, I mean, I don't want to put down the industry. I make my living because of it, so we're very honored of that. But if you think about 4,000, names out there, there's an average. There's an average, right? Out of those 4,000, there's some that are average, some below average, and some above average. But have you ever been to a conference where the promoter or maybe the CEO tells you, I've got an average mine in an average area with an average chance of hitting something? And no, it's always the best this and the best that and the best prospects and the best. And I get it.
Every corporate presentation says forward-looking statements, yes. And that's what a forward-looking statement is, right? That's what they do, and you can't blame them for wanting to put their best foot forward and paint their company in a positive light. But this is a good way to really investigate that, is by you and I and all these other guys getting out there and really looking at the site itself and looking at the rocks and talking to them, walking around and seeing that. So what's interesting about the one we're going on tomorrow, I noticed in the presentation you and I were given ahead of time to prepare for this, was all the safety precautions that we have to adhere to. There's going to be all kinds of gear we're going to have. There's a 45-minute safety presentation we're going to go through. They warned us about, if something happens, if your light goes out, we're going to be underground, stop and yell. They said there could be animals in the area. This is out in the middle of nowhere, essentially, right? So in the woods and the hills. So if bears, snakes, so if there's a bear, all I have to do is make sure I outrun you, David.
Right. Well, let me use a euphemism. Let me circle back and just comment that that's where we go, because here is the best infrastructure in the best area with the best prospects.
Right.
When you're on the ground, you can pretty much filter out a lot of that.
Exactly.
And that's why we do it. And, you know, I don't know how many trips that I go on, or David and Smith goes on, or David and I together go on, that we never say a word about.
Yeah.
Because it's just not fitting
Right.
our modality. Doesn't mean it isn't right for somebody else. Doesn't mean someone that's going to take perhaps a greater risk. But, you know, you can't determine risk on a lot of these projects. You just have to give it your best shot. See, yeah, this does really have good infrastructure. I mean, I was at one of my earlier visits was in Mexico. As far as I could tell, this thing lined up pretty darn good. I was definitely ready to do a write-up on it and, you know, give it my 2 or 3 cents worth. And one of the older analysts, you know, I was young once, tipped me off. They said, you don't want to do that. And this is one to keep to you outside of the earshot of anybody else.
Of management,
So,
yeah.
you know, okay, why? I can learn. So it's near the biggest marijuana factory in this state of Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's too close.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, thanks for the advice. Because I would never
Wouldn't
known
have
that
picked up.
or dreamed of it.
Right.
Even though I saw the road, I saw the, you know, the drills going, I saw all the stuff that we usually see on one of these analyst tours.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing there with a sign saying, hey, I'm a big marijuana field over here.
That's a good point. I was on a trip once, and I won't say the company or even the location, but we had to have an armed escort to go there, and we actually ended up getting a military escort. There was a whole truckload of people with machine guns following us there. We were in a bulletproof vehicle, you know, and you don't pick that up on a website.
That's right. Yeah.
And realizing that, and just how the danger that they saw, the potential for risk there that they saw, they felt the need to do that. And that makes you think twice.
Sure.
Okay, is there going to be security issues here? Are they going to get robbed at some point? And that's not something you're going to pick up on a website. That's
No.
why you have to go.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm a big believer that you learn a lot on the ground. I think we all of us that are pretty serious in this business do the same thing.
Yeah.
So we could probably talk stories for the next 4 hours. So let's move on to the bigger picture.
Sure.
We've been bulls. I would say I've been a perma bull. I mean, I've called the top every time so far, and I have coined the phrase, you know, silver or the metals can scare you out or wear you out. I'm pretty certain that we've entered the last phase of this major secular bull market. It's been going for basically 20 years. I think we have a few more years left, and there's many that think we got another 10. I don't know. I do know how markets move, and generally speaking, you get the biggest push at the last part of the market.
As you've always said, 90% of the return comes the last 10% of time. And that's true for a lot of assets, especially bubbles, right?
Yeah.
That's how it happens. And in my personal opinion, I do think gold and silver, especially silver, are probably going to be the next asset bubble out there, which means 90% of the move is probably still ahead.
Yeah, I still believe that, but you know, time will tell. I'm not addicted to the outcome, really. I really want it to be much higher, and I really would love to see, you know, a lot of people move into the space for their own benefit. But regardless, where do you see this market over the next few years?
Next few years, if that's the time frame, then I would see it as a culmination of whatever this bull market move, bubble, whatever it ends up being. That could very well be when it's starting to hit its peak. Now we may not really get started for another year, and I know people don't want to hear that. And I could be totally wrong. I could start next month. September is a great month for gold and silver. It could kick off then. Who knows? But it wouldn't surprise me, I guess, to say that if it would take a little bit longer to get there. But once it takes off, it probably is going to really make its big move then. And so I've just been positioning myself, buying physical gold, physical silver, buying a lot of stocks on dips. You know, or adding tranches to positions I own that have gotten a little underwater or something like that. So I've been using it to build a portfolio for what I think is ahead. So, I don't know how high they go. I don't really worry too much about that. I just think we're in the right place at the right time with the right assets, So I think the future probably is very bright, for us. If you can hang on, like you said, wear you out, that's what a lot of people are feeling right now. I don't feel wear out. I of course wish it would start now, but I'm not going to wear out because I'm looking at a big picture. The big picture says for me that gold and silver are going much, much higher.
Yeah. The number one correlation that is opposite is gold to the stock market. And Mike has done a great job. And by the way, you work with goldsilver.com, my friend Mike Maloney, and we know most of the troops there. But he's shown many times where gold has actually done better than the gold stocks. And that's a fact. I won't deny it. And there are other times where obviously the gold stocks do far, far better than the gold itself. That's why I like a combination. I think that gold stocks are so undervalued still that they have a big run. The reason for this, but I want your thing. Well, let me stop there. I'm not going to give you my reason. What do you think? Do you think the stocks will outperform this time?
I do, because they're so undervalued, like you said. The gold stocks to gold stocks to the S&P, gold stocks to real estate. Any ratio you want to look at, the mining stocks are dramatically, historically undervalued, despite the big 2020 that they had. They've been weak this year, admittedly, but despite the big 2020, they're still dramatically undervalued. In fact, I just did a chart of mining stocks to the S&P, and it's near historic lows. Yeah. There's a little blip on this long-term chart where mining stocks outperformed the stock market from last year, and that's it. But, historic highs are still way up here. Yeah. So any return to any normalization, any return to the mean, even just getting back to the average, mining stocks have to outperform their underlying metal by 2, 3, 4 times easy. And of course, the juniors, which you and I love to specialize in, they're gonna go. Yeah. They're gonna probably do 10x to the metal. So sure. At least the good ones.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks for your thoughts on that. It's very similar to my thinking. And one of my other thoughts is that people that miss the gold bandwagon. So gold's pushing 25. It's at 3,000. People are waking up to it. Inflation's still there. It's actually getting in the mainstream press somewhat. And it's not all negative. So people from the last bull market that I participated in love to buy cheap stocks. They love to buy cheap gold. So they don't want to pay $3,000 for an ounce of gold when they can buy, 100,000 shares of a 3-cent stock and feel like a big shot because, right. Hey, I own 100,000 shares of XYZ mining. I don't think that's going away. Even though you've got the internet and you can do better research sitting at your computer and, without getting a newsletter, you can kind of ferret this thing out if you know what you're doing. I still think the emotions will take over. I think the psychology will take over again, and people will say, I'm not going to miss out, fear of missing out. I'm going to buy some cheap gold stock. I'm going to get rich, and it'll be a repeat of what we saw in, late 79, 1980. Except this time, it's not going to be a U.S. phenomenon. It's going to be global.
That's a big point. Mike has made done a lot of research on. He had me doing research on that as well. The difference between the market now versus the 1970s. And that's one of the big points is that, the percentage of the investors in the world that can participate or that did participate in the big bull market from the 1970s, gold and silver's biggest bull market in recorded history, right? Was very small. It was like 10 to 15% of the global population. Now it could be 100% essentially of the global population. And of course, all the currency printing that has taken place, all that's just been created out of thin air is much higher, obviously, on a per capita basis now than it was then. So there's a lot of differences between then and now. So when this thing gets going, there could be a lot of both greed and fear, I think, could be pushing this depending on what the circumstances are at the time. But it could really it could be a true bubble, just like what Bitcoin did, where the chart goes vertical like that. That's what we could see with some of these mining stocks.
So I'm going to dive deeper, and this is a question I got from one of my premium members, and it's a very good, valid question. He says, "Are you right, meaning me, and I'll throw you in there, about these cheap stocks going crazy in the final phase of this bull market, because it's really difficult to get any broker to trade these penny stocks. I've tried this broker and that broker and that, and now I do recommend that, unfortunately, well, there's a few online brokers that you can deal with, and David Smith wrote Making Green from the Pinks. It talks all about
That's good.
Yeah, it's very good. It's almost worth the price of the subscription. But anyway, how to navigate through these entities or these brokers that tell you they can't, but they really can, and how to get on the phone and do what you need to do. I do have one full service broker that's familiar with my work, has been since Paul Sarnoff. Do you remember who he is?
Oh wow, you're going back there. I
I'm
know
going
the
back.
name. I don't know if I've met him.
Well,
but-
Paul was near the end when I met him, and this broker was a very young guy when I met him at one of the resource shows, and we've been friends ever since. And I send him clients that are willing to pay a little extra to get full service on these type of stocks where they're difficult to buy. Right? And he can take foreign, UK citizens and that type of thing. So the question is, do you think that because of the protection mechanism, I'll call it, that is afforded most of these brokers that won't let you participate in these penny stocks, that will curtail this idea that we both have?
Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea what's going to happen. They're going to open it up.
Yeah.
Because they're going to start flying, and they're going to get more and more and more demand from their customer base. You can trade online with a lot of these. There's a few every once in a while I run into, and I'm pretty far down the food chain, right?
Yeah.
In terms of small stocks.
Right.
But it's like Bitcoin. Bitcoin, you really couldn't trade. A lot of people couldn't buy it.
Yeah.
And now look what's happened. Because of demand, the price itself forced some of these brokers to open up. So, but even right now, there's very few that I can't buy. I'm a TD Ameritrade, if it's okay to mention that.
Sure.
And I can buy most of 99% of what I want to buy. I can get there. And I have a full service broker too in Canada, so you can go that route as well. But I think the shift is going to be, they're going to be forced to open up trading simply because of demand from their clients, which is probably going to be a result of prices running so much. So I think that's what's going to happen. And yes, to the other part of the question, is this really going to happen? Well, look at it this way. How many stocks out there that we own that probably have a market cap of less than 50 million?
Yeah, right.
And what's the average market cap of a stock in the S&P? I mean, when this becomes the favored, sector, yes, these things can really fly. Now, this assumes that we are right about where gold and silver are going, and if we are, and it's not dependent, by the way, on the stock market doing well.
No, in fact, it's almost dependent on it not doing well.
Right.
As I said earlier, that gold is most negatively correlated to the stock market.
Right.
Most people think the dollar, and it plays into it, but it's really the stock market.
Right.
And then the gold stocks are a subset of stock, but they act like the metal at certain times, as we talked about earlier.
And that's another thing, just how small this market is. We both have talked about this ad nauseum, but this is a favorite topic of mine, is just how small this market is, So, I mean, the last time I looked, Apple Computer could buy the entire primary silver industry with something like 5% of its cash.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculously small. And that's another reason I think we're probably going to be right about this, is when the money, currency starts to flow into this sector, it's just not going to take a whole lot of capital coming in to really push these prices northward. And I think that's what's going to happen. There's no guarantees. There's nothing etched in stone. but I think we're on the right side of this, and I think it's still ahead.
I agree. And, in my own, I guess, defense, I never said you put everything in the gold market or the silver market. I said it's the best hedge that exists. I think it's a better hedge than Bitcoin because, you can be offline and still hold on to your coins. But regardless, a little bit goes a long ways in this market when you're right.
That's a good point. Yeah, I look at it like I want physical gold and silver as my defense in case we're wrong about the mining stocks, right? I don't think we will be, but again, if we're wrong, we still have real money, And I use the mining stocks as the leverage, as the offense, But I guess you could say I'm kind of all in. I have a lot of cash still, but I don't have a lot of other investments. I look around the market. What's fairly valued out there, let alone undervalued? Stock market? No, it's made 39 new highs, David. And this was last week before I left on vacation. It's made 39 new highs for the first half of the year. Gold hasn't done that. Bitcoin hit a huge high, right? It's pulled back, but it's still high. Real estate's going gangbusters. What out there really is going to offer me a chance to be buy something as an investment that is undervalued? I don't see anything. And so in that sense, I'm not in the regular stock market. I'm not in real estate. I'm in a few cryptos, but I'm out of Bitcoin now. So that's how I look at it. I don't see where I can get any other value really anywhere else.
Well, I'm certainly overweighted, but that's trying to be fair with most people because most people don't understand. But I want to make one last statement, and I'll turn it back to you to finish off. This is pointed out. I'm knowing it kind of in the back of my mind, but didn't really think about it. I put out on my blog, I do a weekly perspective, I call it. I try to keep mainstream financial news in the first, half or so of the update. And then I usually comment about gold and silver. Sometimes I make it silver only, but it's not random. It's always financial. Sometimes it's metal specific. Most of the time it's general with some metals commentary. Point I made was, are we being too hard on the gold market, or are we being too hard on gold bugs? Because from the beginning of the market, over a 20-year time frame, gold has had a compounded annual rate of return of over 10%.
I saw that.
And I said, if you go by shadowstats.com, John has said we're at about a 9% inflation rate. So gold's primary purpose is to be the stablest stable coin that exists.
Right.
An ounce of gold never changes.
Right.
What changes? The value of the currency around the money.
Right.
Money is stable. The currency isn't.
Right.
So it's done its job. It's preserved your wealth. At times, gold can get overvalued. It can make you wealthy in rare occasions. I think we're hitting one of those. I think this event that, according to my research, is about every 350 to 400 years. And Mike, I'm on your side, but I don't have to agree with you on everything. I don't think this is a 40-year currency situation. I think this is a 400-year monumental economic conundrum that's only fixed by drastic reevaluations of everything. That's my take. Am I right or wrong remains to be determined. But my point is that it's big, really big. And so you do need, some hedge that's proven itself. I would rather go with a proven, bulletproof vest rather than the latest one that's really not proven. My life's at stake. I'm going to put my money on something that I think is going to be the best possible, defense I could have. So I could go on and on. I think we've done long enough, but I want to turn it back over to you. Any final comments you have on the markets, gold, silver, Spokane, or whatever?
Well, gold is the store of value. At times it will be overvalued. At times it will be undervalued. 5 years ago, it was probably deeply undervalued, no matter how you look at it. But on a ratio basis, when you look at gold or mining stocks to the S&P, to real estate, to whatever, it's still the most undervalued asset out there still. And it's at $1,800, whatever, an ounce right now, and it's still dramatically undervalued. And that doesn't count all the financial conditions, the big stuff like you're talking about, like Mike's talked about, that can still play out. So it's going to be something, and there could be a lot of social upheaval that comes with that. If the worst case scenarios play out, and in that case you'll want to own gold, and I'll be knocking on your door to come rent a room from you.
Very good. Well, Jeff, it's always a pleasure to spend some time with you. Welcome to Spokane, and we'll be seeing you tomorrow.